No, we're not talking about the hand sanitizing today. We're talking about plant fertilizing. Welcome to the beautiful world of aquascaping. This is a very, very deep topic, and it's absolutely not for beginners. Why not? Because I don't really want to scare you guys who do not have any experience in the planted tank hobby with all the science. And when we're talking about fertilizing, you'll see that we're talking about a lot of science, and it's going to be very confusing for some. And I don't want to confuse people here on this channel. For those of you guys who just started this hobby, I'm going to tell you just one thing. Buy a brand fertilizer, use it according to the brand's recommendation, which is written on the label, and you'll be fine. That's it. That's all you need to know. And this is why in some of the previous videos I only mentioned that fertilizing is not an issue, it's easy. But then when you get into the details, it can be really, really complicated. Fertilizers are much needed by plants. Their growth needs it, their health needs it. You need to avoid algae by providing everything to the plants so that they won't rot, they won't die off, and your tank's not going to look like a desert in a couple of weeks. Desert underwater? What's the point of that? Anyways, let me lay out the basics of fertilizing. There's the lean type of fertilization, which will not add a lot of fertilizers in the water. This is the ADA type of fertilizing, and there's the rich type of fertilization, which is represented here by the Green Aqua macro and micro ferts, estimative index-based ferts. In the old premises of Green Aqua, we used the rich type of fertilization, the Green Aqua macro and micro ferts, and we were really happy with the strong growth, the lush green colors of the plants. But when we moved to the new premises here in Budapest, we switched to the lean type of fertilization. So right now we're using the ADA mineral and the ADA Brighty K ferts, which are to be seen here in this gallery, as well as Seachem XL for the carbon supplement. We're going to talk about that later. So we're using these three in the gallery. At some of our clients, we're using the Green Aqua macro and micro fertilizers, and those are very rich fertilizers. They add a lot of ferts to the water column. This is all you need to know at this moment. ADA or Green Aqua macro micro. And from here on, everything is going to get very complicated. I'm going to get into a lot of details. Brace. The lean fertilizing style means that you're not going to add a lot of ferts to the water column. You're going to add just enough for the plants to get nutrients and not to suffer and not to produce rotting organic material in the tank, which would result in algae. What is the advantage of lean fertilizing? The main advantage, and this is why we use ADA ferts in the gallery, is that you don't have to trim the plants so often. And maintenance with this many tanks is a really, really big problem for us. So for those of you who have multiple tank syndrome, so you have lots of tanks in your home, the lean type of fertilizing is very good because you don't need to trim the plants very often. The second advantage of the lean fertilizing is that you're not going to get algae, because algae, just like plants, will profit from the nutrients. So when they sense that there's enough nutrients and something's not right in your tank because you made a mistake or you didn't pay attention to something, then the algae bloom is going to appear and you're going to have an ugly tank, and you don't want that. Another advantage of the lean type fertilizing is that you can get really nice reds, provided that you have enough good quality light above your tanks. If you starve your plants for nitrates, and lean fertilizing does not have a lot of nitrates in the dosage, then the reds will be more accentuated. The moment you will start adding nitrates, the reds will start to turn orange, and you're not going to have that much accentuated rich colors. The disadvantage of the lean type fertilizing, the main disadvantage of it, is the slow growth, because plants do not get a lot of nutrients, so the growth will be very slow, which is a good thing when you're talking about maintenance, but it's a bad thing if you want to have quick results. And You know, most of us are very impatient and we really want to have quick growth on day one, or we just want to do a quick competition tank and we want to apply for competition. And that's the moment when you should really start adding fertilizers in abundance so that you're going to be able to see the lush green growth, good colors, and everything from, say, 1 month into the life cycle of the tank. Another advantage of the rich type fertilizing is that you can skip fertilizing day. So if you dose daily and you skip 1 day, you skip 2 days, it's not a problem because plant nutrients will not be depleted from the water column. With the lean type fertilizing, that would be a problem because the first levels are so calculated, are so low, that if you skip 1 or 2 days, you might have plant deficiency symptoms afterwards. So I said in the beginning that you have 2 types of fertilizing, the lean fertilizing and the rich fertilizing. And I think this terminology is a little bit misleading as well, because in the lean fertilizing, you also have an abundance, a lot of potassium. So the name lean and rich would not cover completely what's happening here. It's very important that we do 50% water changes on all tanks every week. If you don't do the water changes, the fertilization will be affected. So these things go together, all right? That's very important. I'm not saying that our fertilization is perfect. It's not. We need to adjust. Sometimes we see pale colors and we need to add a little bit of nitrates. Sometimes we don't see accentuated reds and then we're going with the iron fertilizing. What else? Color of mosses. If they're like dark green and they don't have the proper lush green color, we need to add phosphates. We know that. So we're checking out tanks regularly and then we add fertilizers accordingly. We try to keep the levels low. We only have 2 guys doing the maintenance. We don't want to overload them with a lot of trimming. And they have not only these tanks, but they need to take care of the fish tanks as well, and the shrimp tanks and the plant holding tanks, etc. So there's a lot of work. So lean type fertilizing works perfectly for us. But the drawback of that is that you really need to concentrate on the need of the plants and you need to identify what the problem is. And identifying problems with plants is really, really difficult. You have all kinds of charts and drawings and everything that would explain to you what kind of deficiency signs relate to what kind of fertilizing problems. And that is really, really complicated and it depends on many things. So those charts are really misleading. I would strongly not recommend you to use them as reference because deficiency can come from CO2, deficiency can come from lighting, it can come from temperature, soil issues, etc., etc. So you never know what's obstructing your plants. So the first of them is stunted growth. And stunted growth is said to be related to calcium deficiency. Calcium and magnesium are in the water, and some water has enough calcium, magnesium, some tap water does not have enough of it. Then you need to add minerals, etc., etc. So that's where we're going to the water treatment section. We have a separate video on the water parameters as well. Stunted growth can come from hard water, for example. If the water is too hard, the plants will not thrive. Most of them really like soft water. Or stunted growth can come from very high nitrate levels. So for example, if the nitrate level is above 50 ppm, then you will see, for example, the Monte Carlo leaves will be smaller, the Hemianthus calytrichoides leaves will be smaller. So stunted growth can come from many things. What's iron deficiency causing? Yellow with new growth. Well, I've seen yellow with new growth for nitrate deficiency as well. Manganese, spots, holes. I've seen spots and holes, pinholes on leaves with the potassium deficiency as well. Dark veins, light leaves are contributed to magnesium. Loss of leaves, darker colors, phosphate. Stunted growth, leaves die, CO2. We talked about that. Yeah, so these are the deficiency signs in plants. All right, so let's talk about the different plant fertilizing elements. There's 2 groups in that. The first group would be the macro elements. The name macro means that there's a lot from something in the water, and those are the salts. And there's 3 types of elements that are included in the water. The first one is the nitrates. Plants need a lot of nitrogen in order to grow. It's actually the second biggest quantity that plants uptake after carbon, and they get that from carbon dioxide. The second macro element that you would need would be the potassium. Potassium is a problem in planted tanks, and this is why the lean type of fertilizing has a lot of potassium, because potassium is quickly depleted in the tank, and fish and rotting organic material and your filter's nitrification process will not contribute to making more potassium in the tank. They would help you somewhat in nitrates and in the third group that follows in phosphates. So this is the third group, the phosphates. But potassium is a problem, so this is why even the lean type fertilizing adds a lot of potassium to the tank. As I said, the third type is the PO4, is the phosphorus, the phosphate, and phosphorus is needed for the energy of the plants. So that's very important also. You don't need as much phosphate as you would need nitrates or potassium for the plants, but you would still need a lot compared to the second biggest group of fertilizing, the trace elements. The trace elements, as the name suggests, is traces of something, and those are all iron, boron, manganese, so basically a lot of metals, etc., etc. So you've got a number of metals that you need to add in the water as traces. The biggest quantity of them, 1 ppm, is iron. Iron is very important for the growth, it's very important for the coloring of the plants, so that's the majority composing element in that. If you look at the names of the sea camphors, which are right here in front of me, which is the third brand that I'm going to mention today, you will see that some of the names are featured on the bottles here. Most people make this hobby too complicated. It's about electricity, it's about chemistry. No, it's not about that. It's about the lush underwater nature. So you really have the chance to make it easy by using one brand fertilizer and just applying that. You've got a lot of time to think about the chemistry and electricity and all the do-it-yourself stuff later. Just start the hobby, enjoy it, get some experience in what you're doing, and then later you would be able to start chemistry and start mixing your own salts, etc., etc. Don't get confused by all the advice that you get from self-proclaimed experts. Please don't do that. So for those of you guys who want to get into the advanced side of things, I would encourage you to have a holistic approach, which means that you should really think about your nature aquarium as a whole. Think about lighting, filtration, CO2, fertilizing, substrates, water changes, temperature, everything together. Don't just think about fertilizing and state that this fertilizing is good for me. You will need to fine-tune, to tweak things. You will need to look at other elements in the equation. So it's not an easy thing, but it's a beautiful thing. And once you establish the regime that's most suitable for you, you're going to be able to enjoy your nature aquarium and have lush growth, not to have deficiencies. You're going to be a happy aquarium hobbyist. All right, let's talk about the plant nutrient uptake. That's very important. The uptake in a plant can happen in two places. It can happen in the root or it can happen in the leaves. The root uptake is obviously the soil. So good quality soil with rich nutrients is very important. Most plants will take a lot of nutrients from the soil. So this is why we always have the base layer fertilizing substrate at the bottom of the tank, because the roots will go down to the bottom of the tank and they would uptake the nutrients from there. If you don't have base layer fertilizing substrate, that's also okay. You can have some root tabs like the ADA Bottom Plus, and that's going to provide enough nutrients for your plant roots. The second group, the second style of nutrient uptake is the leaves. The epiphyte plants, for example, do not have any roots in the soil because they're attached to rocks or wood. So they're basically floating in the water. So they would need to uptake everything from the water column. So this is why the water column fertilizing can be a very fragile thing, or it could be problematic for these plants. And this is why in the lean fertilizing style, we always see some problems with mosses, with anubias, getting yellowish, etc., because they just don't get enough nutrients from the water column. And that's when we start to compensate for that by adding nitrogen and phosphorus. We're going to look at the tank and we're going to determine whether it needs to be enriched somehow. Another problem that we frequently see with lean fertilizing is the plants are just not pearling. You have good CO2, you have strong lighting, but you don't see any accentuated photosynthesis. And this is because of lack of nutrients. So if you see that, it's maybe because your plants are not photosynthesizing. So you need to add more ferts. I'm sure I lost everybody by now, did I? I asked Sebi and he's telling me that he's just looking at the picture and the composition and the lights and the sound and he doesn't understand what I'm talking about. So see how confusing this whole thing can be? It's deep water. All right, so when do we start fertilizing? We usually start fertilizing from day one, and this is especially needed with lab plants because lab plants do not have the energy supply abundance with them. Usually when plants come out of nurseries and they're grown not in a lab, they have a lot of energy when they come into your tank and being planted. But the lab plants would need accentuated fertilizing from day one. So take care of that, fertilize from day one. And there's no holy grail in plant fertilizing. You will see all kinds of self-proclaimed titans, gurus coming and telling you that their fertilizer is much better than the others, it's much stronger, it's much cheaper, etc., etc. I don't think that those people have the means to test their fertilizers as widely as the major manufacturers. Seachem is a company specialized on fertilizers and on water treatment. They have a huge lab with lots of engineers, experts in biology, so they would know what the plants want and they would test everything continuously on a daily basis for years. So this is why I would encourage everybody to go with a brand fertilizer that has a wide testing behind their products, because they would work most probably much better than somebody who just came up with something with the best intentions. And there's another topic that I really want to talk about, and this is the no ferts, no CO2, fish waste is enough. That's not working. It might work for some, and I don't say that some of you guys would not be able to do a planted tank even for a long time without having algae, very stable, and no ferts, no CO2. But for most of you, it's not going to work. Basically, you're betting on your tap water having enough nitrates, phosphates, and potassium. Tap water is very different from city to city even, from parts of city to another city, depending on where do they get the water from. You cannot really bet on your tap water, it's not going to work. And another thing, let's talk about algae and plant fertilizing. So you've got two problems here. The first problem is not enough ferts. Plants suffering, decomposing their own leaves to send the nutrients to the new leaves. Rotting organic material produces ammonia. Ammonia results in algae bloom. The second problem would be a lot of ferts in your water column. That would result in algae. We can get the thread algae, for example, with the rich type fertilizing, and that's a sign for us that we need to reduce the first level. It's too much. If you have higher levels than 50 ppm of nitrates, for example, the plants would start suffering because it's too much, and they're going to start also the decomposition process. You don't even see it with your eyes, algae bloom again. So the goal is to stay within certain limits. Not too much, not too little. We also see the green dust algae, for example, at Green Aqua if we have low ferts. But also green dust algae can come from bad filtration, from sunlight hitting your tank, even for 5 minutes a day. So it can come from many things. So let me clarify the word ppm that I've been using. It's parts per million, which is used to measure the amount of fertilizers that are available to the plants and are dissolved in the water column. It's not a lot, but it can be still measured. And you've got a lot of tests, and some people are buying nitrate tests, phosphate tests, they're testing for ammonia even. I don't really think that you would need those tests. If you want to gain some experience in what's happening in the water, obviously you should, but I think that by looking at the plants, gaining some experience in avoiding algae and providing everything to the plants, you would be more successful. So I would spend that money on something else, and I would just start thinking, observing the nature. So if you start adding ferts and you start combining the different types of ferts, and you're already an accomplished aquascaper, you would know that you don't need tests at all. We don't use tests at Green Aqua at all. We're not testing the water for nutrients. We know what we're adding, because usually when you're adding ADA ferts, you're not adding a lot of nitrates and phosphates, but you're adding a lot of potassium. So if we see yellowing and we know that our CO2 levels are okay, that means that there's a problem with the nitrates. So we're going to start adding the nitrogen. There you go. This is the nitrogen, Seachem nitrogen, for example, or you've got the ADA nitrogen as well. Now that we're talking about expenses, I want to stress that the biggest problem with beginners and for those who do not have a bigger budget to maintain the tank is fertilizing. You would spend more money on fertilizers than you would spend on electricity, because that's the second thing. The third most expensive maintenance cost would be the CO2. You need to change the bottle from time to time. And the fourth would be the water, the cost of changing the water. But the biggest expense is always nutrients. And this is why people start to buy cheaper products. And this is why people start to think about making their own fertilizers from dry salts, for example, which are not bad. You know, you can do that. It's okay. But new problems will arrive. You'd have to know a lot more about chemistry. You're going to get mold in the fertilizers because you didn't use any additives that would prevent that. You would have to test the water because you would not know how much you're adding because you don't have a recommendation. So it's working, but it's deep water. Obviously, if you don't have a choice, you have to jump in it and you have to study a lot. And the estimative index is a very good place to start at. That's a type of fertilizing that was invented by Tom Barr in California. And it's a really good style of fertilizing. That is the basis of the rich style of fertilizing. The estimative index, in a nutshell, will tell you that you would need 5 to 7 ppm of phosphates, 20 to 30 ppm of nitrates, and 20 to 30 ppm of phosphates in the water. This is the macronutrients, and 1 ppm of iron, and the rest that I'm not going to detail here. And his goal is to have enough nutrients in the water column for the plants to uptake. And he never measures the amount of the plant nutrient uptake. He only says that you should know what you're adding into the water. And once you know that, you would be sure that the plants would get all that they need. And the weekly water changes will reset that. So if you add more, that's not a problem, because if you do the weekly 50% water changes, you will reset the levels so that the levels of the nutrients will not grow too high to stunt the plant growth and to cause algae. The only problem with that, as I told you in the beginning, that the plants will start to grow as crazy, and you will obviously not be able to keep up with the maintenances, especially if you're a busy person. So I would encourage everybody to buy the biggest bottle you can from any fertilizer, because those are usually cheaper in the long run compared to buying small bottles every month or so. Another thing that is very confusing is that your tank itself is changing all the time. So as the plants mature, as they grow, as your tank gets older, the fertilizer needs of the plants will also change, and you would need to change the fertilizing regime with it. So it's going to be a trial and error thing, and I'm really hoping that you guys are going to be able to figure out what your plants need in the long run and act accordingly. And I'm sure you'll do, because thousands of aquascapers have done that already. And let's talk about two of them in particular. One of them is my friend Josh Sim from Malaysia, 7 times world champion. You have 2 videos on the Green Aqua YouTube channel with him. One of them is almost at 1 million views. Oh my God. And he was kind enough to post in a Facebook post what kind of fertilizing he uses. And he said that he's doing potassium nitrates, Secam Trace, and then Secam Iron. This one. So he does that twice a week after the water change to compensate for the nutrients that were taken out with the water change in his tanks. And then he occasionally adds potassium nitrates and iron on alternate water changes. So once per week he adds nitrates in order to be able to have the rich colors, and he adds iron for the reds as well. But also the water changes are only 20 to 30%. He does change the water very often, but he doesn't change as much. And he explained to us in one of his videos that he does that because he found that not as much, but more frequent water changes would contribute to the stability of the tank. What's happening with the Dream On? He has a Violet Volt PI, I'm not sure what that is. He does that after every water change. And then he told me that he was using ADA ECA for iron, so not only Secam Iron, but ADA iron in one of his tanks, and that's it. The other friend and famous aquascaper that we know and talked about fertilizing is Felipe Oliveira. He's using the Secam Ferts, but you know, the Secam fertilizing regime is one of the most complicated ones. You have basically, I'm checking the chart here, you basically have a different type of fertilizing for every day of the week. So you're adding ferts, day one, Flourish, Excel, Iron, Phosphorus, Nitrogen. Day 2, Trace, Excel Iron. Day 3, Potassium, Excel Iron. I'm not going to continue. So you're like doing all kinds of combinations of these ferts, but if the Secam engineers tell us that that's what you should do, and if Hitomi swears by it, it should be working fine. And also if Felipe is using it, that's also a really good thing. Secam ferts are also very, very concentrated, so you might have to buy 5-6 expensive bottles at the beginning, but you would be fine in the long run because you don't need to dose as much of those as you would have to dose, for example, from ADA ferts. And when we talked with Felipe about fertilizing, he pointed out a very, very important thing. Beginners always want to have the same quality like he does, like Green Aqua does, like the pros do. The problem with that is that we have a very sophisticated regime which is not easily achievable for someone who just steps into this beautiful hobby. So you really need to study, to gain experience in order to use that. And you know, Tropica has 50 plus years of experience in growing aquatic plants. So they're surely knowing what they're doing. They have two types of fertilizing. They have the specialized, which is for high energy, a lot of plants. And the other one is the premium, which is for lower plant mass tanks. So let's talk about beginners now, because beginners want easy solutions, out-of-the-box solutions, and luckily most manufacturers have come up with all-in fertilizers product. You don't need multiple doses of everything, you just need one bottle of ferts. You can add that daily or weekly. You have the Easy Life, for example, and the Easy Life brand is something that we always recommend for beginners who have no CO2, who just want to have some plants. And we always recommend them to increase the dosage when they increase the plant mass in their tanks. George Farmer does that, for example, with Tropica ferts. You can add twice, 3, even 4 times more ferts than the factor recommendation. And I would not recommend you to do that with the Green Aqua Macro and Micro. So with strong ferts, you don't want to dose multiples. But also be aware, because there are a lot of aquarium brands that I'm not going to obviously mention that are making these fertilizers just to have another product in their range. And these fertilizers are not meant to be for planted tanks. And this is also true for the fertilizers that were made for agricultural use. And there's another problem. These fertilizers made for agricultural use can actually color the water, because in agriculture it's not important how the soil or how the water looks. In planted tanks, it's very important that you have crystal clear water. The iron, for example, it needs to be attached to something, and that something is called chelate. And that would make sure that the iron is in a form in the water that's not going to get in reaction with phosphates, for example, because iron and phosphate together a badly chelated iron even, can go into the reaction with the phosphate and cause a precipitation in your filter, causing the bacterial decomposition of ammonia into nitrates to stop, and you will get algae because your filtration is basically halted. Dosing pumps, that's very important. If you don't want to dose daily or you don't want to think about fertilizing, you can use a dosing pump. Obviously those come at a price, but if you have them, and we do have at certain clients' tanks, we even have it in the big tank here in the Green Aqua Gallery, you just fill up the bottle, program the doser, and it's gonna add everything that you need in the tank. And while we're here, I forgot to talk about the carbon supplements. In the beginning of the video, I told you guys that carbon is the most important thing for plant photosynthesis. And carbon is obviously added with the injection of carbon dioxide, but we still want to have some help in the fight with the algae with the addition of Seachem XL here in the Green Aqua Gallery and in many other tanks. Some people, and even my friend Yuris, have argued that XL is not good because you're basically poisoning the tank. That might be true, it's a good hypothesis. I told Yuris that I don't believe in that. We're using everywhere, and it helped me in my home tank as well with the fight against algae. Obviously, they don't replace carbon dioxide, but some plants, some low energy plants, epiphyte plants, Marsilea crenata, or those plants that are good for beginners, can survive without carbon dioxide injection if you do add some carbon additives. Carbon supplements are basically polymerized glutaraldehydes, which is very important, that needs to be of a very good quality. The level of the polymerization is very important. If it's not good enough, then it will decompose in the water in say 6 hours. And if your lights go on at say 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, as in the case of my home tank, then you have a problem if you dose in the morning. Because you dose in the morning at 8 o'clock, and by the time that the lights go on and the plants would need the carbon that you supply with that, it's going to be gone. And that's the case for most products that are on the market. The original product, however, and kudos again to Seachem who came up with XL, their product does not decompose. So if you add daily XL, you'll be fine. And that's what we do here in the Green Aqua Gallery. Also be very careful with the glutaraldehydes, because all these products can really hurt your eyes, can cause blindness, can hurt the skin. So don't let the children play with it. Close it. Wash your hands after using them. That's very important. Another concern that some people have is, are nutrients bad for shrimp or for fish? Usually they're not. So if you're using good quality fertilizing, you're not going to have a problem with the livestock. We're dosing high energy Green Aqua macro and microferts to many tanks, and we never had a problem, a shrimp or a fish health problem because of what we used there. But if you want to breed shrimp, and if you're a breeder, you're a special kind of person. So you might want to consider the needs of the fish and the shrimp first. So you might not want to have as many plants or have plants at all, because that's very important for you. So you might want to have a very lean fertilization that is much safer for breeding the livestock in your tank. So that's another thing. There's no universal truth in this hobby. Some people are claiming that ferts are bad for livestock, but we have thousands of examples of the opposite. So let's talk about soil for a little bit. Most plants are uptaking the nutrients from the soil, and I get the question very often, how long would a soil last in your planted tank? Our experience tells us that if you have a good quality base layer fertilizing substrate and you have a good quality clay-based substrate that has some nutrients in it, there are different types of substrates. For example, the ADA substrates have a lot of nitrates in it. Tropica substrates, on the other hand, do not have as many nutrients in it, but you can also buy the root taps. And also after half a year, everything starts to deplete. So we're starting to see signs of nutrient deficiency in some plants. And that's when you need to refresh your soil by adding some root tabs like the Bottom Plus, or you've got some great Tropica products. You even have the Seachem products available here at Green Aqua. We basically add the root tabs back after half a year and do it every 3 months or every 6 months afterwards. I hope I didn't scare you, and I hope I was cohesive enough for you to understand why fertilizing can be really easy, but also really complicated if you get into details. Fertilizing, understanding fertilizing is just as difficult as setting the right amount of CO2 in your tank, and everything connects to everything else in your tank. But once you realize that, and once you get a little experience in what you do, everything will just fall into place in your mind. Everything is going to be really crystal clear for you. It's crystal clear for me. And as I said, if I'm looking at a tank, I immediately know what's missing by looking at everything at the same time. Some of you guys are, and you know that I answer all the comments under the YouTube videos all the time until I can, because I receive literally thousands of comments every week. But some of you guys are asking me, I have this and that, and I have algae. But you only say 3 or 4 things that are a problem in your tank. And I can never answer the question. I need to ask you 10 more questions until I understand and I fully comprehend the whole system then that you have. And then after that, I would be able to answer your questions. Obviously, I don't know what's happening there. So please try to think like we do. We always ask questions. We need to look at everything. Your filtration, your temperature, your soil, your CO2 level, your lighting hours, your water change regime. What am I missing? Your plant mass, how many fish you have in the tank, etc., etc. If you look at everything at the same time, you will just start to get the big picture. And then fertilizing will just get into that as one element. And it's going to be really easy. And you're not going to be afraid to buy 5 different types of ferts from Seachem and use them accordingly, and buy the ADA ferts and just use them and compensate them with nitrogen or iron occasionally. So you're not going to be afraid of fine-tuning the tank. So basically, if you know that you need potassium and traces, that's very important for the lean type fertilizing, because you don't want to do a lot of maintenance on your tanks, you will be fine. And you will dose and work with your planted tank like a pro. All right, I really hope that you liked this video, and thanks for staying with me until the end. Please consider subscribing if you didn't do so yet. Also, please help us if you want to by joining the channel and helping us with the production costs. Much appreciated. We'll see you next week. Goodbye. I think I lost all the beginners. I lost like 1,000 hobbyists in 15 minutes by just talking about fertilizing. What have you done, Balázs? But how can how would I be able to like explain this better? I don't know. There are many things to take care of.